this feels like it relates to this idea of like the aestheticization of DAOs, and also, you know, design and art and cultural production, and that like and how do we value cultural production? Like, you know, AI as a tool is something that's uh gonna be really present in this cultural production space, like as an entity, like, you know, in the way that the algorithm has become this like this thing that we all contend with, that it has its own persona, its own weight, that AI is here as well. That my you know, my take is that, yeah, tastemaking, culture, narrative, brand, community, like those are the only remaining moats that we have. And so how do we, in the face of AI, how do we effectively you know, push resources and value, yeah, towards this last remaining moat?
You know, I think there's an interesting challenge, which is, I think if the financialization of culture actually will destroy the same cultural production mechanisms that we actually rely on. And like, I think it's worthwhile to ask ourselves if we actually do want that. Do we actually want production houses of culture to be profit optimizing engagements and investable vehicles? And I think the answer is probably slightly more complex than, you know, I may have given it credit for initially. You know, when we think about what produces culture is actually not necessarily profit-making machines, but it's a byproduct, or it's adjacent to it. It's maybe even as a consequence of it, of the outcomes of other organizations. I do think, though, that one thing that is obvious to me is that when we think about culture production and artistic production, it comes from the class of artists and poets and other members of society that are often go underfunded or underserved. And I think that maybe the right answer is not necessarily at an entity level, but there is potentially other types of vehicles of investment which are not necessarily so focused on, you know, the VC environment or that type of investment.
I've been thinking about it a lot lately, because specifically with the launch of Zora Zine, and just, you know, kind of thinking about the decentralized media further, and how decentralized organizations can find funding, which I think is another challenge on its own. I highly recommend check maybe, and I don't want to offend anyone, but I'm not a massive fan of Lex Fridman. However, he did a good episode lately with Sam Altman, the one of the creators of OpenAI, and Sam was talking about the model that they swapped to a few years ago, which is called a cap profit, which is, I think, an interesting model for us maybe all to, you know, explore a little bit more. And I'm also trying to find the bridge between, you know, nonprofit and for-profit whenever you're building a cultural production, or even a public good, which is even further for being like a nonprofit. Right now, I have a hot take that cultural production should not be connected to the traditional models of VC. There is a new model for venture contributing, which is, you know, a lot of DAOs, like DAOs are exploring. If the VC company or the people behind the brand are experimental enough, open-minded enough, embracing, you know, the relationship coming with the cultural producers, understanding, you know, what value they're getting outside of just the immediate profit and capitalization, then great and amazing. That creates, you know, opportunity for experimentation. Traditional VCs, I would definitely say hard no, just hard no.
Yeah, I have to agree with Yana here. You know, it's really hilarious to me when VC types or big tech people come to Twitter and they start tweeting about how journalism would be. I think it's also a fascinating phenomenon. I'm like, is there anything else you want to mansplain me? I think it's fascinating to see them as well, talking about AI and AI facilitating things, because AI is just aggregating information that that the internet already has, and that information has been supplied through years and years and years and years by humans. So like there's no skipping humans in terms of cultural production. There is obviously and I have to say I'm super pro AI for many different reasons. But I think the most there is an obvious challenge with immediate replacement of people by AI, especially with regards to like more basic content production or research. And even mathematicians, I think they were on top of the list the last time I checked. But that will happen just for a short time. People will specialize, people will fine-tune their careers, and people have always adapted to new technologies. So there's absolutely no indication that AI will just render us all obsolete. We'll just get smarter and we'll find ways. I saw, for example, a tweet of a copywriter that unfortunately, and it's really shitty because AI is not even funny just yet, that got sacked from their job. And someone was suggesting them to actually win over AI and prepare themselves as like specialist in prompts, which is so important, because the kind of information that AI is providing right now is not sophisticated enough, in part because the prompts are also not sophisticated enough, and you need to continue working in an iterative way with the AI to create a good production. So that's an entire job by itself. And the same will happen with like more visual production with regards to AI. The more people use AI to generate their images, to generate even logos in the future, the more like a selective eye will be needed, for example, and that eye can only be supplied by humans. And the testing will have to be done with A/B testing and brand test, and focus group also formed by humans. So I think the two things go together. But I do think that, and like Yana said, VC shouldn't have any intervention with regards to when it comes to journalism, any kind of cultural production, just because of the obvious bias and the notion that they can replace or produce anything, which is totally false. And most of the times, the things that they come up with are actually ahistorical, or they lack a understanding of different disciplines.
So what would you all say is missing in the tech stack for us to get the funding of cultural production right now?
Imagination, probably.
100%. More imagination. That's the tech stack piece that we're missing.
We're too focused on the production of the culture, which is a very taxing, it's very taxing labor, and sometimes we don't have either the business know-how, the same as tech people don't have the business know-how to run a company, and then you end up with awful CEOs just because they were brilliant developers that evolved into turning to be CEOs. Cultural producers don't have to be the providers of the funding for their projects. So we need to be able to put together different teams that have different expertise to be able to find revenue streams and to come up with innovative funding models as well.
About our current financial system